She knocked once, and the man behind that door was hiding messages he was terrified to hear. One lost phone, one quiet billionaire, and a choice that could either ruin her fragile life or change it forever. But before she could turn back, the gate opened, and nothing stayed simple after that. Anna Thompson stood at the edge of a gated driveway, the phone warm in her palm, as if it still carried the imprint of the stranger who had lost it. She'd been holding it for 20 minutes now, long enough to second-guess herself, long enough to imagine turning around and catching the last bus home. Anna was good at returning things: lost wallets, dropped keys, misplaced phones left behind on cafe counters. It was part habit, part principle. But she had never returned anything to an address like this. The house rose behind the gates in clean lines and quiet confidence, glass, stone, and steel framed by trimmed hedges and towering trees. No flashing lights, no excess, just space, the kind of space that suggested a life with room to breathe. Security cameras tracked her movements silently, and for the first time that night, Anna felt the weight of her scuffed sneakers and thrift store jacket. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, another reminder she needed to get home. Her brother would be waiting, dinner still undone, bills still unpaid, life still pressing forward whether she paused or not. She pressed the intercom. A voice answered, calm and neutral. "Yes? Hi, I found a phone." There was a brief pause. Not suspicion, not surprise, just silence. "Please wait." The gates slid open. Anna shifted her weight, suddenly aware of how tired she was, how much her feet ached, how thin the line was between getting by and falling behind. She told herself she'd hand over the phone, say a polite goodbye, and leave. Then the front door opened. Jeremy Haynes stepped out onto the stone walkway like a man unaccustomed to interruptions. He wasn't dressed like someone expecting company. Dark jeans, a plain shirt, sleeves pushed up, no entourage, no rush. Just a quiet presence that made the space feel even larger. "You found my phone?" he asked. "Yes," Anna said, walking toward him. Each step echoed too loudly in the open driveway. "You dropped it near the transit station." He took it from her carefully, their fingers brushing for the briefest moment. The contact startled her, not because it was intimate, but because it was attentive, like he noticed. He checked the screen, then looked back up. "Thank you. Everything's here." "Of course it is," she replied, then softened. "I just wanted to return it." He studied her, not in a way that made her feel measured or judged, but considered, as if she were unexpected. "Let me pay you for the trouble." She shook her head immediately. "No, I didn't do it for money." Something in his expression shifted. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Well," he said after a moment, "at least let me offer you something. Water, coffee, it's late." She should have said no. She had every reason to. But the way he asked, careful, unassuming, made it feel less like an obligation and more like a choice. Anna hesitated, then nodded. "Okay," she said quietly, as she followed him inside. She had no way of knowing that returning a lost phone wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of one neither of them had planned. Welcome back to Tales of the Fireplace Family. Here, we share stories that remind us of one truth: love and loss touch every soul, no matter who we are. We never know when, how, or why, but love always finds us, and its stories deserve to be told. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the moments that change everything. And to our returning hearts, thank you. Your presence keeps this fire burning. Stay with us till the end. Share your thoughts. And tell us where in the world you're watching from. Let us continue. Anna didn't believe in fate, but standing there, inside a stranger's home, she couldn't ignore the feeling that something had shifted, something rooted far deeper than coincidence. Jeremy's house was nothing like the mansions Anna had imagined when she thought of billionaires. There were no gold accents, no oversized art screaming for attention. The space was clean and deliberate. Concrete floors softened by warm rugs, floor-to-ceiling windows that let the night settle gently inside. Everything felt intentional but restrained, like someone who valued quiet more than display. "Sorry," Jeremy said, noticing her hesitation as she stepped fully inside. "I don't get visitors much." "It's nice," Anna replied, because it was. Not intimidating, not cold, just calm. He motioned toward a sleek kitchen island. "You can put your bag there if you want." She did, slowly, as if the room might disappear if she moved too fast. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward exactly, but it was heavy with things neither had said. Jeremy broke it first. "I'm glad you brought the phone back." She nodded. "I figured someone would be worried about it." He glanced at the device still resting in his hand. The screen was dark now, but his thumb hovered over it, uncertain. "There were messages I hadn't answered," he said, almost to himself. Anna didn't ask who they were from. She'd learned a long time ago that people shared what they were ready to share, no more, no less. "Sometimes," he continued, "it's easier to ignore things than deal with what they bring with them." She felt that in her chest. "Yeah," she said quietly. "I get that." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if surprised she might understand. Most people don't. They settled into an easy rhythm after that. Jeremy leaned against the counter, relaxed but attentive. He didn't interrupt when she spoke, didn't rush to fill the silence when she paused. It was such a small thing, but it made her feel considered. "So," he said, "what were you doing out so late?" Anna hesitated, then shrugged. "Just finished my second shift. I clean offices downtown in the evenings. Mornings I work at a cafe." "That's a lot," he said, not with pity but with recognition. She smiled faintly. "It pays the bills." "Still," he said, "2 jobs. And a teenage brother," she added before she could stop herself. Once the words were out, they kept coming. "Our mom passed last year, so it's just us now." Jeremy straightened slightly. "I'm sorry." "Thanks." She swallowed. "He's a good kid. Just angry sometimes, and tired. We both are." There it was, the truth she didn't often say out loud. The constant calculations, rent versus groceries, bus fare versus keeping a few dollars aside in case something broke. Survival math, she called it, always running in the background of her mind. Jeremy listened without trying to fix anything. That, more than anything, surprised her. "I don't know much about that kind of pressure," he admitted after a moment, "but I know what it's like to feel responsible for things you can't control." She met his eyes. There was something familiar there. Not exhaustion, exactly, but restraint, like someone who had learned to carry their weight quietly. The room went still again, the silence stretching between them. Not empty, but shared. "Can I get you something?" Jeremy asked. "Water? Tea?" "Water would be great." He poured it carefully, handing her the glass like it mattered that he did it right. She took a sip, the coolness grounding her. "Thank you," she said. They talked a little longer after that, about nothing important, about the city, about how quiet the neighborhood was at night. But beneath the small talk ran something else, an awareness. 2 people who knew what it meant to be alone, recognizing it in each other. Eventually, Anna glanced at the time. "I should get going." Jeremy nodded, though something unreadable crossed his face. "Of course." He walked her to the door. The house felt different now. Less like a stranger's space, more like a place she'd been invited into. Briefly, honestly. "Thanks again," he said, "for the phone, and for staying." She smiled. "You're welcome." Outside, the night air felt cooler, sharper, The gate slid open as she approached, just as quietly as before. But this time, Anna felt different stepping through them. As she walked away, phone returned, obligation fulfilled, she couldn't shake the sense that she'd left something behind, or maybe picked something up she didn't yet know how to carry. And for the first time in a long while, she wondered if some encounters were meant to continue, not because of fate, but because both people felt the pull and chose not to ignore it. The house felt larger after Anna left. Jeremy stood by the door longer than necessary, listening to the quiet settle back into place. The soft hum of the security system, the distant rustle of trees outside. Silence reclaimed every corner, the way it always did. He locked the door and rested his forehead briefly against it, exhaling. It had been a simple interruption, a lost phone, a stranger doing the right thing. And yet the air still felt disturbed, as if something had been moved and not put back where it belonged. Jeremy walked toward the kitchen, the phone still in his hand. He set it on the counter, then picked it up again almost immediately. The screen lit up, a soft glow in the dim room. Missed calls, unread messages. He hadn't needed to see the names to know who they were from. Jeremy sat at the island, elbows braced on the cool surface, and scrolled slowly. Notifications stacked on top of each other. Days, weeks. Messages he had deliberately avoided opening because he knew what they would ask of him. Connection, forgiveness, vulnerability. He stopped at the voicemail notification. One unheard message. His thumb hovered over it. The last time he'd listened to her voice, everything had still been intact. His company, his future, the woman he thought he would marry. Then came the discovery. The quiet meetings behind his back, his business partner siphoning funds, his fiancée knowing and saying nothing. Trust unraveling in the span of a single afternoon. After that, Jeremy had learned efficiency in emotional withdrawal. He cut ties cleanly, sold the company, moved somewhere quiet, built walls high enough that no one could surprise him again, including his sister. The voicemail had come after the fallout. Apologies layered with regret. Explanations he didn't want. Love he wasn't ready to hear. He set the phone down, stood, then sat again. Across the room, a faint echo of Anna's voice lingered in his mind. Not dramatic. Not pleading, just honest. I just wanted to return it. No agenda, no expectation. It struck him then how rare that was. He closed his eyes, the memory of her standing there replaying itself. Tired, guarded, still choosing decency. The way she spoke about her brother. The way she didn't soften her reality to make him comfortable. The way she refused money without bitterness. Jeremy picked up the phone again and pressed play. His sister's voice filled the room, tentative but steady. She didn't justify herself, didn't rush. She simply said she was sorry, that she missed him, that she hoped he was okay, even if he never called back. When the message ended, the silence felt heavier than before. Jeremy stared at the dark screen, something tight and unfamiliar settling in his chest. He hadn't expected relief. He hadn't expected peace. But he also hadn't expected the ache, the sense that by shutting everything out, he might have frozen parts of himself along with the pain. He thought of Anna again, of how easily she had walked back into her life after leaving his, carrying responsibilities she couldn't afford to drop. She hadn't asked him for anything. That mattered. Jeremy stood and paced the length of the room, restless. The phone buzzed in his hand as another notification came through. Nothing urgent, nothing important. Still, he silenced it. He didn't want to retreat this time. He didn't want to let the moment disappear simply because it was easier to be alone. Jeremy sat back down and opened his contacts. Anna's number was there, saved automatically when he'd returned the phone to his account. He stared at it longer than he should have. He wasn't going to blur lines. He wasn't going to offer help she hadn't asked for. Whatever he did, it had to be clean, respectful, professional. After a moment, he typed, "Hi, this is Jeremy. Thank you again for returning my phone. I was wondering if you'd be open to meeting again. There's a project I'm working on that I think you might have insight on. No pressure at all." He read it twice, then once more, and hit send. Anna was sitting at the small kitchen table when her phone buzzed. Her brother was in the next room, headphones on, laughter muffled through the wall. A good sign, a rare one. She glanced at the screen and froze. Jeremy. Her first instinct was to ignore it. She'd already crossed one invisible boundary tonight, stepping into his home, sharing pieces of herself she usually kept tucked away. She didn't want to read into something that might mean nothing. But curiosity tugged at her. She opened the message. It was polite, measured, no assumptions, no charm layered on thick, just an invitation. Anna leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the quiet of his house, the way he'd listened, the fact that he hadn't once made her feel small. She typed a response, deleted it, typed again. "I'd be open to that," she finally wrote. "Let me know what you had in mind." She set the phone down and sat there for a moment, heart beating a little faster than necessary. Maybe it was a coincidence. Two strangers crossing paths at the right time. Or maybe some connections asked to be explored. Not because they were destined, but because ignoring them felt like another kind of loss. Anna arrived 10 minutes early and immediately wished she hadn't. The cafe Jeremy had chosen sat on a quiet corner downtown, all exposed brick and soft light, the kind of place where people lingered over laptops and half-finished drinks. It wasn't extravagant, but it wasn't cheap either. Anna ordered a black coffee, no extras, and took a seat near the window, adjusting the strap of her bag like it might anchor her nerves. She reminded herself she was here for a conversation. Nothing more. Jeremy arrived right on time. No driver, no entourage. Just him, dressed simply, scanning the room until his eyes landed on her. When he smiled, it was polite, a little tentative. "Thanks for coming," he said as he sat down. "Thanks for asking," Anna replied. They exchanged a few neutral words, how the week had been, how busy the city felt lately, before Jeremy leaned back slightly, hands folded in front of him. "I didn't want to be vague over text," he began, "so I'll be direct now." Anna appreciated that. "Okay." "A few years ago," he said, "I started a community initiative. It focused on providing digital access and training for under-resourced neighborhoods, basic tools, practical education. Nothing flashy." Her interest sharpened despite herself. "It mattered to me," he continued. "But when things fell apart in my personal life, I walked away from a lot more than just my company. The initiative stalled. Eventually, it stopped." Anna nodded slowly. "That happens." "I want to rebuild it," he said. "But not the way it was. I don't want it driven by optics or savior narratives. I want it grounded in real needs, real people." He paused, studying her face, not searching for approval, but gauging honesty. "And when you talked about your life," he added, "the way you spoke about responsibility, about making things work with limited resources, it stuck with me." Anna folded her arms loosely. "I'm not an expert. I'm not looking for one," Jeremy said. "I'm looking for perspective." He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside were notes, outlines, early drafts of ideas, not polished but thoughtful. "I'd like to offer you a consulting role," he said. "Paid, defined, no open-ended expectations." Anna's fingers rested on the folder, but she didn't open it yet. "This isn't charity," he continued calmly, as if he'd anticipated her hesitation. "And it's not an obligation. You wouldn't owe me anything beyond the work itself." She met his gaze. "Why me?" "Because you didn't try to impress me," he said simply. and because you live the reality this initiative is supposed to serve. The answer unsettled her more than flattery would have. There's a power imbalance here, Anna said carefully. You know that. Yes, Jeremy replied without defensiveness. That's why I want everything clear: scope, hours, pay, and if at any point it doesn't feel right, we stop. She studied him, searching for the catch, the unspoken expectation, the subtle pressure. She found none. What about boundaries? She asked. They're necessary, he said, for both of us. Anna finally opened the folder. The work was practical: research, feedback, shaping programs in ways that made sense beyond spreadsheets. It was the kind of thing she'd complained about in private. The way so many well-meaning efforts missed the mark because no one listened to the people they claimed to help. I can't promise availability all the time, she said. My brother comes first. Understood, Jeremy replied. This would work around your schedule, not the other way around. The honesty in his voice made her chest tighten. I'll try, Anna said at last. Cautiously. A corner of his mouth lifted. That's all I'm asking. They decided to use the rest of the time as an informal first session. Jeremy pulled out his tablet, sharing early concepts, and Anna didn't hold back. She pointed out flaws, asked hard questions, suggested changes that shifted the entire framework. Jeremy listened, took notes, adjusted. At one point, he laughed softly. You're not afraid to challenge me. I didn't come here to agree with you, she said. Good, he replied. Neither did I. The air between them warmed, not with romance, but with momentum. Respect building in real time, the kind that didn't rush ahead of itself. When they stood to leave, Anna felt steadier than she had walking in. Thank you, Jeremy said, for saying yes. She nodded. Let's see where it goes. As she stepped back onto the sidewalk, coffee long forgotten, Anna realized something unexpected had taken root. Not dependence, not fantasy, but trust. And that, she knew, could be just as dangerous, or just as transformative. The work settled into a rhythm before either of them noticed it happening. At first it was just meetings, scheduled, purposeful, contained. They met in neutral places, cafes, a quiet co-working space Jeremy rented by the hour, sometimes the long table in the corner of a public library. They talked logistics, timelines, outreach. Anna pushed back when ideas felt impractical. Jeremy listened, recalibrated, asked better questions. Then the meetings stretched. A coffee turned into lunch. A working session bled into an early dinner when neither of them noticed the time. Jeremy started bringing food, simple things thoughtfully chosen. Anna learned he paid attention to details, how she took her tea, which days she looked more tired than usual. They didn't name the shift. They didn't have to. Some nights, their conversations drifted away from the project entirely. Jeremy would walk her through a new concept, then pause mid-sentence and ask how her day had been. Really ask. Anna found herself answering honestly, surprising herself with how easily the words came. She talked about her brother, about his sarcasm, his stubborn streak, the way he pretended not to care but always waited up if she came home late. She admitted how exhausting it was to be both parent and sibling, how she sometimes feared doing it wrong. Jeremy didn't interrupt. He didn't reassure her with empty phrases. He's lucky to have you, he said once, quietly. The comment stayed with her longer than it should have. In return, he shared pieces of himself he rarely voiced. Not the headlines, the sale, the numbers, the public version of his story, but the quiet aftermath. How silence had become a habit. How isolation felt safer than disappointment. How he sometimes wondered if he'd mistaken control for peace. They spoke late into the evening more than once, phones buzzing with missed notifications they ignored. The city outside dimmed. Lights inside stayed warm. There were moments when something hovered between them, unspoken but present. A look held a second too long. A laugh that softened into something else. Anna felt it in the pauses, those tiny spaces where either of them could have crossed a line and didn't. Once, during a planning session at Jeremy's place, someone from his past called. He declined the call without explanation, but Anna caught the tension in his shoulders. Later, she mentioned a co-worker who had offered to help her brother with tutoring. Jeremy's expression tightened just briefly. "That's good," he said. "That you have support." She noticed the way his voice changed on the word support. Not disapproval, something closer to uncertainty. "Is it?" she asked gently. He hesitated. "I'm still learning what that looks like." Another night, after hours of work, they stood by the window overlooking the street below. Jeremy spoke about a time when everything felt full. Friends, plans, shared futures. Anna listened, heart steady, present. "You don't talk about her much," she said carefully. "I don't know where to put it," he admitted. "The past." She nodded. "Sometimes just naming it is enough." Their eyes met then, something fragile passing between them. He looked like he might say more. She felt the words gathering in her own chest. Neither of them spoke. Anna realized, slowly, how rare it was to feel this visible, to have someone listen without shaping her story into something more convenient. With Jeremy, she didn't feel like a problem to be solved or a role to be filled. She felt understood, and that scared her. She told herself this was temporary, contextual, the byproduct of shared work and mutual respect. She told herself labels complicated things. Still, when Jeremy smiled at her across the table, when he remembered something she'd mentioned once in passing, when he made space for her world without trying to rearrange it, she felt the quiet pull deepen. One evening, as they packed up after a long session, he paused. "I'm glad you said yes," he said. "To this." "So am I," Anna replied. There was more beneath the words: gratitude, curiosity, something unresolved. They walked out together, parting at the corner as usual. Anna watched him disappear into the evening, her chest tight with a feeling she didn't want to examine too closely. As she headed home, she wondered, not for the first time, how long they could keep calling this work when it was already becoming something else. Neither of them had named it yet, but both of them felt it, and neither seemed ready to walk away. The call came in the middle of the afternoon, just as Anna was finishing a shift she couldn't afford to leave early. Her phone buzzed once, then again, an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. She ignored it the first time. When it rang again immediately after, something tightened in her chest. "Yes," she said, already bracing. "Ms. Thompson? This is the vice principal at East Ridge High. It's about your brother." The room seemed to tilt. By the time Anna hung up, her hands were shaking. There had been an incident, a fight. Words exchanged that escalated too fast. Security called. Questions asked that carried consequences she'd been fighting to keep at bay. She left work without explaining, her mind racing ahead of her body. On the bus, she stared out the window, watching the city blur, calculating next steps with ruthless efficiency. Who to call? What to say? How to keep this from becoming something that followed him forever? She didn't think about Jeremy at first. But when she arrived at the school and saw her brother sitting alone in a small office, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on the floor, the weight of it pressed down hard. This was bigger than exhaustion. Bigger than pride. It was fear, sharp and immediate. She got him home hours later, paperwork folded tightly in her bag. Her jaw clenched as she listened to his angry, half-apologetic explanations. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She did what she always did, absorbed it. It wasn't until the apartment was quiet again that she let herself breathe. Her phone buzzed. "Jeremy, are you okay? You missed our meeting." She stared at the screen longer than necessary. Something came up, she typed. I'll explain later. The dots appeared almost instantly. Do you want help? Her chest tightened. She didn't respond. 10 minutes later, another message came through. I mean it. Whatever it is. She exhaled sharply and typed before she could stop herself. I don't need help. There was a pause this time. Longer. Anna, the next message read, let me support you. That word, support, felt suddenly heavy. She called him. Jeremy answered immediately. What's going on? Her voice came out sharper than she intended. My brother's in trouble. School stuff. It's handled. Okay, he said carefully. But if there's anything... There isn't, she snapped. This isn't something you can fix. Silence crackled on the line. I wasn't trying to fix it, he said. I just thought... You thought you could step in, she cut in. Like this is another problem you can throw resources at. That's not fair. Isn't it? The words spilled now, faster, edged with something she'd been holding back. You don't know what it's like to live without a safety net. To know that one mistake can cost everything. Jeremy's voice tightened. You think I don't understand loss? I think you don't understand survival, she shot back. Not the kind where there's no backup plan, where you don't get to fail. There it was, the line she couldn't take back. The silence that followed was heavy, stunned. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, guarded. I wasn't offering charity. That's how it feels, she said, whether you mean it or not. Jeremy exhaled slowly. I thought we were past that. We're not, Anna said, her throat burning. We can't be. Another pause. I don't want to overstep, he said finally, but I don't know how to be here if everything I offer is wrong. That's the problem, she replied. I didn't ask you to be here. The words landed hard. Jeremy went still on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, the warmth that had once lived in his voice was gone. Then I'll step back. Anna closed her eyes, the weight of it settling in her chest. That's probably for the best. They hung up without saying goodbye. The silence afterward was unbearable. Days passed. No messages, no meetings, no casual check-ins that had once become routine. Anna moved through her life on autopilot. Work, home, paperwork, exhaustion, each step heavier than the last. At night, she replayed the conversation, wishing she'd chosen different words, wishing fear hadn't sounded so much like anger. Jeremy, alone in his quiet house, returned to old habits, distance, control, the familiar safety of withdrawal. Whatever fragile thing they'd been building lay between them now, cracked and unresolved. And neither of them knew whether it was already broken beyond repair. The quiet didn't fade with time. It sharpened. Anna noticed it in the spaces Jeremy used to occupy without effort, in her phone, in her calendar, in the pauses where his questions once lived. She told herself the silence was necessary, protective, that she had done what she always did when things felt unsteady, drawn a line and stood behind it. But late at night, when her brother was asleep and the apartment hummed with tired stillness, the truth pressed in. She had pushed him away because she was afraid, not of Jeremy, but of what it meant to need someone, of letting help turn into reliance, of repeating a pattern where love came with conditions she couldn't afford to negotiate. She thought about her mother, about how quickly strength had turned into fragility, about how Anna had stepped into the space left behind and never stepped out again. Dependence, she had learned, was dangerous. It made loss catastrophic. And yet, Jeremy hadn't tried to control her. He hadn't offered rescue. He had asked to stand beside her. She hadn't known how to accept that. Across the city, Jeremy sat alone at his kitchen island, the phone resting where he'd left it days ago. He hadn't touched it since the call, hadn't trusted himself to. The voicemail notification still glowed. He pressed play. His sister's voice filled the room again, steadier than he remembered. She spoke of regret, of silence, of how shutting people out didn't stop the hurt, it only delayed it. When the message ended, Jeremy stayed where he was, hands flat against the counter. He saw the pattern clearly now. Every time closeness approached, he retreated. Not because he didn't want connection, but because he feared offering something that would be rejected. Feared believing again and being proven wrong. With Anna, the stakes had felt different, real. That terrified him. He picked up the phone and stared at her name. This time, he didn't text. They met 2 days later in the same cafe where it had begun, both arriving early, both carrying more than they wanted to admit. Anna's hands were clasped tightly around her cup. Jeremy's posture was controlled, careful. "I'm sorry," Anna said before either of them could sit fully into the moment, "for how I spoke to you." Jeremy nodded once. "I'm sorry I pushed when you weren't ready." They sat with that, the air between them charged but honest. "I grew up learning that help always came with a price," Anna said quietly. "That if you needed someone too much, you lost leverage, control." Jeremy leaned forward slightly. "I grew up believing that offering love meant giving someone the chance to leave." Their eyes met. "I don't want to be saved," Anna continued, "and I don't want to feel like my life belongs to someone else because they can afford to help." "I don't want to feel like I have to earn the right to care," Jeremy replied, "or that everything I offer will be misunderstood." The tension eased, not because the problem vanished, but because it had finally been named. "Support doesn't have to mean control," Anna said slowly. "But I need to choose it." Jeremy nodded. "And I need to offer it without attachment to the outcome." They let the words settle. "I don't know what this is," Anna admitted. "But I know I don't want to keep running from it just because it scares me." "I don't want to keep retreating," Jeremy said, "just because staying present feels risky." The honesty between them was raw, unpolished. No promises, no labels. Just a shared decision to step forward instead of away. When Anna stood to leave, Jeremy didn't reach for her. He didn't need to. "I'm glad you came," he said. "So am I," she replied. As she walked out into the late afternoon light, something felt lighter, not resolved, but open. And for the first time, Anna believed that love, real love, might exist without control. It might exist as choice, and that, she realized, was something she could finally say yes to. The change didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, through choices made with intention instead of fear. Anna accepted help, but only the kind she could stand inside without losing herself. When her brother needed academic support after the incident at school, she researched programs first, brought Jeremy options instead of problems. Together, they reviewed them, weighing logistics and fit. Jeremy didn't insist. He didn't override her judgment. He asked questions, offered resources, stepped back when she asked him to. The decision remained hers. Watching him respect that boundary softened something in her chest she hadn't realized was still armored. Jeremy, for his part, began untangling threads he'd left untouched for years. He called his sister one evening and listened without interrupting. He didn't rush forgiveness. He didn't demand explanations. He let the conversation unfold slowly, honestly, allowing space for what had been broken to begin repairing itself. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The community initiative followed a similar path, reborn not through grand announcements, but through groundwork. Anna helped reshape its core mission, stripping away anything performative. They built partnerships with people who lived the realities the program aimed to serve. Jeremy stayed present without dominating, trusting Anna's insight when it challenged his instincts. When the initiative relaunched, it did so quietly. No press conference, no personal branding, just work being done steadily, with care. Anna stood beside Jeremy at the first community meeting, not as a symbol, but as a contributor. When someone thanked her for listening, for translating need into action, she felt a sense of pride that had nothing to do with proximity to power. Their relationship shifted alongside the work, not in declarations, but in decisions. They began to plan time together deliberately, not stolen moments between meetings, but chosen ones. Dinners without agendas, walks where conversation wandered freely. When they spoke about the future, it was with openness, not assumptions. Jeremy didn't offer solutions unless asked. Anna didn't reject care simply to prove she could stand alone. They met in the middle, again and again. One evening, sitting on a park bench as the sun dipped low, Jeremy said, "I don't want to take up space you need for yourself." Anna considered him, then smiled softly. "And I don't want to keep pretending I don't want someone beside me." It wasn't a confession. It was a truth. They didn't rush into labels. They didn't collapse their lives into each other's. Instead, they aligned them, two parallel paths choosing to walk in the same direction. Anna noticed how steady she felt. Not dependent, not guarded, just grounded. Jeremy noticed something too. The way offering support without expectation freed him. The way love, when chosen rather than chased, felt lighter. There were still hard days, moments when old fears surfaced, but they met those moments with conversation instead of retreat. This was partnership, Anna realized, not rescue, not sacrifice, but mutual presence. Standing together at the edge of a community center one evening, watching people gather inside, Jeremy turned to her. "This doesn't work without you," he said. Anna shook her head gently. "It doesn't work without us listening." He smiled, understanding. As they walked inside, side by side, Anna felt something she hadn't dared imagine before. Not safety promised by wealth or certainty guaranteed by control, but stability built through respect. And she knew, with a quiet confidence, that choosing each other didn't mean losing herself. It meant finally being fully seen, and staying anyway. The knock hadn't sounded dramatic when Anna first raised her hand that night. No thunder, no sense of arrival. Just her knuckles against a door she never expected to matter. Now, months later, she understood how quietly lives could change. Anna stood by her apartment window in the early morning light, watching her brother hurry down the steps with his backpack slung over one shoulder, laughing into his phone. He looked lighter these days, more like a teenager than a responsibility she carried alone. She smiled, not because life was easy, but because it was shared. Her days were still full, still demanding. She worked, she planned, she calculated. But the math had changed. Not because money had erased struggle, but because she no longer felt invisible inside it. She had learned the difference. Being helped wasn't the same as being diminished. Being loved didn't require surrendering herself. Later that afternoon, she met Jeremy at the community center. The initiative was thriving now, not loudly, not impressively, but meaningfully. People greeted him by name. Not because he funded the work, but because he showed up for it. He listened more than he spoke. He stayed after meetings ended. Jeremy noticed how the world felt different when he stayed present, when he didn't retreat at the first sign of vulnerability. Reconnecting with his sister had been uncomfortable, slow, but honest. It reminded him that love didn't disappear when it was challenged. It deepened when it was chosen again. When Anna arrived, he didn't reach for her hand immediately. He never assumed. But she slipped her fingers into his without hesitation. That choice still mattered. They sat on the steps outside the building as evening settled in, sharing the quiet between conversations. Jeremy watched Anna talk with one of the volunteers, the way she listened fully, the way people leaned toward her without realizing why. "She sees people," someone once told him, and it was true. Anna noticed him watching and raised an eyebrow. What? He smiled. Just thinking how strange it is that all of this started with a phone. She laughed softly. A lost one. He nodded. I almost didn't go back for it. She turned toward him then, the moment grounding itself between them. I almost didn't return it. They sat with that. The phone had been nothing special, a device like any other. But what it carried, the unopened messages, the unresolved past, the unspoken connection, had been waiting for the right moment to be found. Small choices Anna had learned were rarely small. That night, walking back to her apartment, she passed the same street where she'd first noticed the phone on the sidewalk months ago. She slowed, memory brushing against her like a familiar breeze. She remembered her hesitation, the temptation to keep walking, how tired she'd been, how close she'd come to choosing differently. Inside, her apartment felt like home in a way it never had before, not because it had changed, but because she had. She set her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and breathed. She was still Anna Thompson, still strong, still independent, still learning. Love hadn't erased her identity. It had reflected it back to her. Later, her phone buzzed with a message from Jeremy. "Did you make it home okay?" She smiled, typing back. "I did." There was no grand declaration waiting in the words, no promise to rescue or be rescued. Just presence, just care. And that was enough. Anna lay back on her couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how a single knock, one ordinary, honest act, had opened a door neither of them knew they were ready to walk through. She only went to return a lost phone. But the life that followed proved something she would carry with her always. That love, chosen freely, doesn't tip the balance. It stands beside you. And sometimes it begins with nothing more than the courage to knock. What would you rate this story from 0 to 10, and where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Let's build a global community rooted in kindness, love, and second chances. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who would enjoy it too. Your support brings us closer to our 1K subscriber milestone and fuels our mission to create more emotional stories centered on resilience, healing, and Black excellence. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Your presence truly matters,